LaxFactor podcast. What is up, folks? We are doing another episode here of the LaxFactor podcast. Today's another lazy one from my desk, so I don't have to cut anything up, and I can kind of just rip through, show you my screen, and that is your access here. So we're going to talk today, just one fall ball update from the Richmond Penn State scrimmage, because I thought that was interesting, and I'm getting into now doing the SoCon, so I'm going to try to go through and find all the SoCon teams that have their schedules out, and I'm going to preview their schedule. So today we're going to talk about Richmond against Penn State, and not a whole lot of depth, just, how guys are doing, guys that are coming back and stuff like that. And then we're going to talk about High Point, and their schedule release is out. So we're going to go through game by game, and I'm going to make predictions. I won't do this for every team in Division I, but I am going to try to do it for as many teams in Division I as I can, especially while we don't have a lot of news to talk about. So as always, be sure to like, subscribe. If you're watching us on YouTube, we're approaching 10,000 subscribers there, so make sure you come there. If you're an audio listener, you can watch the video and listen to the audio on Spotify, but you can also listen to us anywhere where you find podcasts for the most part. And that is it. So let's dive into it here. Richmond versus Penn State. I heard that Richmond got the better of Penn State a few weeks ago, and I watched the highlight cut that Maverick put out on their YouTube channel, and it appears that it may have been the case. Now, maybe we had a Richmond-heavy photographer in the mix here, and that was the person who took that video and cut that video up for Maverick or whatnot, but it did look like Richmond kind of put it on Penn State at least a little bit, handful of goals maybe. Ryan Lanchbury, he's back for the Spiders after putting up 28 goals and 39 assists in 2021. He looked very good, and actually one thing I wanted to show you was he did have a nice B2B BTB feed here on the crease. Is that Connell? I always forget what number Connell is, but anyway, that didn't look bad. So that's good news there for Richmond that Lanchberry is back and that he's already looking good. And he also scored a goal. He also ripped I saw in that highlight cut that he had that nice crease. He had a nice feed. He had a really nice cross crease toss. I don't know who that was to, but he sniped a feed from across the crease on that right side to somebody on the left, and they stuck it. I saw him stick at least one goal himself. It was a righty, a snipe from the right wing up on the corner. So Lanchberry looked good, at least in that highlight cut, and we all know what to expect to him. 28 and 39 last year, so he's going to be huge for Richmond again. I also like Richie Connell. I've been a big fan of Richie Connell for a while, and he just hasn't seen the field a whole lot yet. And then Dalton Young is also someone to watch. Connell was 35-7 in 2021, has 16 man-up goals over his career, is an absolute man-up beast. Young had a breakout 35-9 season last year, and he'll look to continue that progress and try to break 50 points in 2023. Richmond will need him too. They need some point production due to losing some guys here and there. For Penn State, I am not sure what this roster looks like overall. I know TJ Malone is back. He was 19-15 last year, but they have kind of an identity crisis at this point. Last year, even with Mac O'Keefe, he didn't put up the point production he normally would have with Grant Ament running around on the field with him, feeding him all left and right, because nobody kind of picked up the stick of the alpha, the outgoing alpha. And O'Keefe just didn't have the Batman to his Robin. Because I hate to say that. That's kind of like a rude thing to say to O'Keefe, because O'Keefe overall is a filthy lacrosse player, one of the best off-ball attackmen to ever play the game. One of the in terms of being able to get open, finding space on the field, and doing it in very sneaky and efficient ways. Nobody's better than O'Keefe. He's got that weird, three-quarter release and he can release it from all different angles, underhand, left-handed, or sidearm, overhand. He's at the PLL level, at least, which is often the case you see with younger guys. He's been dodging. So I don't want to cut O'Keefe up, but an off-ball attackman, that's what they are. They get open, and somebody has to feed them in order for them to do their work, and they didn't have that guy last year on the Penn State roster to do that. Now, maybe this year, with the mix that they have, maybe when you're not trying to force feed a guy like O'Keefe because you want him to put up the points and he's a killer, maybe they end up finding a better flow. I'm just not sure. But TJ Malone, he's one of those guys that's back 19-15, and losing Ament to graduation, they're going to have to figure out completely what they are now, because it's been Grant Ament and Mac O'Keefe's offense forever, and now both of those guys are gone. So they got to figure some stuff out. But they got a lot of young talent, talent that I'm not even sure of until I do some research and look deeper into them. But so I'm not dumping on Penn State completely, but it is an interesting thing to see a big cat team like Penn State that's been a contender for the last couple of years outside of last year, potentially lose, decently in a fall ball scrimmage. Fall ball scrimmages don't mean that much, but I mean, if you don't hang, that tells the coaching staff, a little bit. And I think that's what we saw here. I think that we saw people surprised that Richmond, to a degree, did the things they want. Now, I throw that all out and I caveat all that with, in the end, Penn State could have won by 10. I'm just going off of Twitter chatter, forum posts, and crap like that. I actually have a couple of direct lines that I could have hit up to try to ask, hey, how'd that go? And I just didn't do it because it's fall ball and it's not all that important here at this stage. But so that was the one thing I wanted to talk about. Now I want to dive into High Point. I've been covering High Point ad nauseum over the last few years, so I guess you could kind of call me, like, to a degree, a High Point fanboy or something weird like that. But the reality is they have done a very good job of being in the press, staying in the forefront of the lacrosse game by playing all of these ACC teams. What they did last year was nothing short of absolutely miraculous. And if we kind of look at their schedule from last year, they finished 8-6. But if you watch what this was a scrimmage, I believe, here on the 30. Wait, what is it? Yeah. I think that was a scrimmage against North Carolina. And then you see scrimmage North Carolina, play Robert Morris, a very solid lacrosse team. They get a win. Lose to North Carolina by only 2 goals. Lose to North Carolina again, this time by more, just a week apart, 10 days apart, 11 days apart. Lose to Virginia. Lose to Duke. Beat up a little bit VMI. They probably should have beat VMI up a little bit more than that even. Lost to Richmond. You can't be mad at them. Then they kind of go on their win streak. That's what happens with High Point here, and we're going to see that in their schedule this year. Their schedule at the top is always front-loaded with just absolute killers, lacrosse teams that just murder people. And then they end up with their conference schedule. They get into Richmond, Bellarmine, Mercer, Air Force, Jacksonville. I don't think Air Force is in their conference anymore. And that's where they will flip their schedule from being like their record from being like 2-6 because they played a bunch of killers at the beginning of the season. And then they'll get themselves back to and above 500 eventually. So let's ditch that. And we're going to dive into the schedule here. So in 2021, they had quality wins over Robert Morris, Air Force, Jacksonville, and Richmond. Losses to UNC twice, Duke twice because they lost to Duke in the tournament, Virginia, and Richmond. They got Richmond back in the SoCon tournament and advanced to the NCAA tournament where they eventually lost to Duke that second time there. Asher Nolting, so the guys of import that you all know of, Asher Nolting, 27-45 for 72 points in 2021. Brayden Mayea had a great season, 37 goals, 5 assists, 42 points. I think I talked about it last week that Mayea and Nolting have already showed great chemistry here this fall as well. Hunter Vines, 14-12 and 26 points. 2020, we want to go back a little bit further and just kind of check historically, what are these guys doing with their schedule and how do they start their seasons compared to how do they end their seasons. 2020, they started the season 2-6. And but they would have ended up about 500. I don't even know what my note says here. 2-6, but they would have ended up about 500, if not 7-6 again, had they played. Oh, okay, duh. 2020 was the COVID shortened season. I'm a complete idiot here. So what I was saying was they finished 2020 2-6. They would have easily been 500, if not 7-6, had they played the rest of that season out the way their schedule flows. So that's what you end up seeing with these guys. If we go here and we look at their schedule for 2020. You'll see who they lost to here. They lost to Maryland first game of the season, but it wasn't a close one. They lost. This was the season where 2019 they had beat some teams. They had gone 13-3, and everyone was hoping this was the year they were going to come in and maybe upset Maryland and a couple of these other solid teams they played in the beginning of the season. And the 2020 season did not start well. Maryland waxed them. Duke waxed them. They beat Drexel. Drexel's a solid team. They get waxed by Cornell. Virginia, they did play tough in Charlottesville, but there's something there with them in Charlottesville. They always play well there. So you can kind of see how they started. Robert Morris had a really good year this year, but they would have gotten it together. They would have beat VMI. They could have beat Richmond. They would have beat Bellarmine, Furman, Mercer, Air Force, Jacksonville. So that's where I was saying they started 2-6, but they would have been above 500 by the season's end. So as we look at this year, This year, and then we want to go back and get a little crazy. We can go back and we can actually look at 2019. I don't want to do that now, though. I want to do it on this view. So if we kind of go back into 2019 for High Point, for those of you who are not watching and you're listening, I am showing my screen and kind of ripping through their schedule as I go. So if you're like on Spotify, it's time to flip your phone or your tablet sideways, and then you can see what I'm talking about here. That'll be the big benefit of watching on Spotify, is that you can just switch between audio and the visual here whenever you want to. So as we're looking at the 2019 season, they had an easy game to start. Waxed St. Bonaventure. I actually watched that game. I remember that. They beat Duke in Durham. They beat Drexel by a goal after beating Duke by more than that. They beat Virginia in Charlottesville, and then they lose to St. John's. And this was one of those weird years where it was a team that you could tell they were hot and they could be cold, and they would play up and they could play down. And I think that's still a little bit of their identity. But the fact that they can play up is what makes them so exciting. They beat Robert Morris. They beat UMBC, so you kind of see how their schedule goes. And then they get down to here. And this year they beat Richmond in the finals of the of their conference tournament, make the NCAA tournament. Or, no, that's not true. They beat Richmond at the end of the regular season and then lost to Richmond in the finals of the SoCon tournament in 2019. So just gives you a little bit of their history. And I only show you that or talk about that so that you know that these guys play killers in the beginning of the season. And then that once they get into their conference play, they don't see that type of just absolute massacre again. So let us get into the 2022 schedule here. We have nothing lit up here yet for scrimmages, but I mean, they're getting started early. February 5th in College Park against Maryland. They got waxed by Maryland in 2020. Wisnauskas had 6 goals. Nolting, he had just a goal and 3 assists. They played Maryland tough in 2018 when they were 6-8 on the season overall. So High Point, they've been playing tough lacrosse for more than a few years now, as I kind of outlined already. I have an upset alert on this game here because Maryland is playing with their new number 1. No more Jared Bernhardt. Logan Wisnauskas is now the new number 1. I think Logan Wisnauskas is going to do a great job being the number 1. So don't get me wrong there. But I mean, you have a completely different best player on your team now. Now, I think that I've talked a lot about how there was a season, I think it was the 2020 season, where you almost said that Logan Wisnauskas may have been their best player, even with Bernhardt on the team, because Wisnauskas had a really hot start to the 2020 season. 6 goals against High Point was one of those. But moral of the story, I think Maryland's going to win the game, but I call it upset alert because we're going to have a new look Maryland team to a degree without their pimp of the last 3 seasons, and Bernhardt's been doing it for them for 4 seasons, and I think they're going to have to kind of figure that offensive flow out. The one advantage Maryland has is High Point's not known for playing insane defense, so that may play into Maryland's favor a little bit. But I just watch, because Nolting potentially could be the best player on the field. How often has High Point been able to say, hey, we've got the best player on the field? Now, that happens a lot once they get deeper into their schedule, but last year against North Carolina, Nolting wasn't the best player on the field. Last year, if they did play Maryland, which I don't think they did, but Virginia, Nolting was not the best player on the field. Against Duke, Nolting was not the best player on the field. This year, his super senior year, graduate student, playing against Maryland in that game, you could say Nolting is potentially the best player on the field overall, because he's a dodger, he's a feeder, he can do everything. But Wisnauskas, I think him and Maryland win in the end, but I think that High Point can keep it interesting. Their next game against Colgate should be an easy win, although they're known for playing. They're known as much for playing down, as I said, as they are for playing up. So don't be surprised to see them play Maryland tough and then play Colgate to like a close game, no matter what the Maryland game does. I think they should beat Colgate by 5 to 7 goals realistically, if not more. But High Point doesn't always beat the teams that they should beat up by the margins that they should. So not a real exciting game overall, but it gives them a chance to, instead of starting like 0-4 or whatnot, it gives them a chance to maybe drop a game. They should lose this game, even if they're able to pull out a win. I hope they do. That'd be cool. But it gives them a chance to kind of stay at 1-1 here after these first 2 games, instead of like playing, top 4 teams first 4 games of the season, which is something that they typically like to do. Oddly enough, I don't get it, but I kind of get it. Virginia, They beat UVA in Charlottesville in 2019, lost by a goal in 2021. So High Point's very familiar with both UVA and Klockner Stadium. They for some reason, there's something with that field that High Point likes to play there, and they play there well. They play some of their best lacrosse early in the season on ESPN. Maybe it's the ESPN factor and not as much the Klockner factor, but expect a potential close game there. They've been close the last couple of seasons, so it's 100% worth watching that. But that's another upset alert, simply because they've already done it once. They've played them tough in both of the national championship seasons, so I wouldn't be surprised to see them do it again. At North Carolina, this one's at High Point. I had it listed at North Carolina, but it's not. It looks like this is in High Point. So last year, we know what happened. They played them 3 times between the scrimmage and the 2 regular season contests. They lost both games last year in the regular season. Both came early, back-to-back, as that schedule showed us. And they played tight in the first game. The first game was a hell of a game. And, Carolina would pull away a little bit, and High Point would chip back. So they did a very good job in that first game. Second game, Carolina's got some tape, and High Point, maybe not quite as pumped coming into it. I don't know what the deal was, but they got waxed in the second contest. And it wasn't like an embarrassing waxing. It was just they got beat handily in that second contest. So I don't know. This year, I think High Point has the potential to hang tough again in this game. North Carolina lost quite a bit to Graduation. Yes, they have Gray back, but defensively they're not quite as good as they were last season, losing their best defender to Georgetown here as a graduate student. So, North Carolina defensively, they've got some question marks there. Offensively, I think they're going to be very good still, and they're going to put up a boatload of points. But if High Point could hang with North Carolina last year, I don't think too many people are saying that North Carolina has a better team this year than North Carolina had last year. North Carolina had a lot of depth offensively, and they were a little bit better defensively last year. So I would say Carolina's not going to be down, because Carolina's still a top 5 caliber team, but I think that the top 5 caliber team you're going to see this year out of Carolina is not as good as the team from last year. And I think that's going to be a case here, because we're starting to lose some of our super seniors. We still have the super seniors, but I think there's going to be less of those graduate seniors overall this year, kind of really just elevating the talent and the depth on a lot of these rosters. And now if we want to check in here, at this point, they've played 4 games. So what do I think is going to have happened after these first 4 games here? In theory, if you just look at what should their record be on paper after these 4 games, they should be 1-3. They should lose this game. They might not. They should lose this game. They might not. They should lose that game. And I think they should beat Colgate. So if we're just going by the numbers, I think that they're 1-3 coming out of this stretch here. And I don't think the High Point coaching staff is going to be all that upset if that's the case at that point. We go a little bit deeper here now. And now we're going to get into the next leg of the tournament. Next leg of the season here, we've got Navy. They're going to play at Navy in Annapolis. Not an easy game by any means for High Point. They don't have a huge history playing the military academies. Navy's going to definitely have their hands full with Nolting, but Navy is traditionally a team that plays very strong defense. They typically have an All-American caliber defender or 2 on the roster. Their goalkeeping is typically very good. So I think defensively, while they're going to have their hands full, I think they're going to be able to handle overall and play a solid defensive game against High Point. Depends on how deep into the season Navy is also, because High Point starts so early. If Navy doesn't start as early, it could be Navy's first or second game, and it'd be High Point's 5th game. So that might play into it as well a little bit, especially as you're playing between the boxes. Between the boxes, things are the sloppiest early season for teams. But Navy can win on any given day. So even though this is one of those games that I would say that High Point should probably win, don't be surprised. This could be like one of their upset alert games, I think. And then we don't know season to season how Navy is. For all we know, Navy could end up being a top 15 team, by the time we're 3 or 4 games in. But this is just me basing last year with this year, and then basing the fact that, once again, I think in this game, Nolting has a chance of being the best player on the field. If we kind of go through, Nolting, not the best player on the field against Virginia. Definitely the best player on the field against Colgate. Maryland, up in the air, but it's close there. North Carolina, not the best player on the field. Navy, he's probably the best player on the field again. And that's an important thing to have. When you have the guy on the field that's the best player in the field, he puts up 8 points that day. That kind of opens it up, and you can win on any given day by riding a guy like Asher Nolting. You can tell I'm a big fan of Asher Nolting's here. The next game, Duke. Once again, this one's going to be interesting. Duke has lost a lot, but It's one of those games where, Duke's lost a lot, but Duke also has a lot of pimps coming back as well. High Point beat Duke in 2019 at Duke. They've lost the last two meetings, however, last year getting hammered by Duke in their first meeting before losing to them in a more respectable fashion in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Duke, they're going to be too talented overall, like I said. High Point's not going to be able to stop O'Neal. And in the end, High Point will probably lose this game on paper. Once again, they should lose this game, but you could make the case again. Is Asher Nolting the best player on the field here? Probably not. I'm going to probably give that nod to O'Neal, but Nolting is definitely the most experienced of all the player pimps on the field in this game. So you have to kind of look at it that way. And once again, High Point could come out and pull one of those upsets. And these are the games I love seeing them play. How ballsy is it that in your first 6 games, in your first 6 games, you play Duke, Carolina, Virginia, and Maryland. Nobody does that. Nobody does that. That is absolutely just obscene that the High Point coaching staff would put a schedule like that together. But it's worked for them because I'm obviously sitting here talking about them now, and I've become a fan of High Point here over the last few years because of the big, huge brass balls that the players and the coaching staff have. So I think they do drop that Duke game. But once again, upset alert, baby. You don't count High Point out at any point, especially as they might want a little bit of revenge for the ass whooping that they took the previous season here. And then we get down to checking in. We're going to do another check-in here at this point per my notes. So this is the part of the season where it's always looking really rough for High Point, because if they lose the games they should lose and they win the games they should win, they'll be 2-4 at this point after beating Navy and Colgate and then losing to the 3 ACC teams and Maryland. So 2-4 at this point, but their 4 losses will have been to teams that are likely going to be in the top 8. I mean, Duke's going to be in the top 8 by this point still, I would assume. Carolina, Virginia, and Maryland will all probably be in the top 8. 3 of these 4 teams that they lose to early in the season could be in the top 5, could be in the top 4. All 4 of these teams. There is a world in which these could represent the top 4 teams in the country, even at this point. So that's how crazy their schedule is. I just want people to understand, when you're trying to watch the season and progress early in the season and you're like, hey, who's doing well in the SoCon? And you see that High Point has a 2-4 record by March 1st. Some teams haven't even started playing games at this point. Understand that High Point is playing a schedule like nobody else would ever dare play up to that point. And then from a conference perspective, this is where the strength of schedule falls off quite a bit, but they can't help it. There's nothing you can do. So 2-4 at this point. If they win the games they should win and lose the games they should lose. But this is where they hope to be 3-3 by the end of the stretch. I think the coaching staff, by the time you get through Murderer's Row, as we'll call it, where they're playing top 10 teams, every other week, if not every week there during this stretch here. If they're 3-3 at that point and they can upset one of these teams and they handle their business against Navy and Colgate, man, that coaching staff will be absolutely delighted, because that's going to keep them right near hovering around the top 10, top 12 in the country if they can pull that off. If they're 3-3 after playing Duke, they will be a top 15 team for sure, and it'd be a travesty if they weren't. Now we get into the easier portion of their schedule here. We got Bellarmine. This starts that easy stretch, as I said. Should be an easy win, albeit always watch for High Point to play down a little bit, allow this game to be a little bit closer than it should be. After that, they've got Robert Morris. They lost a coach and a ton to graduation, so this game's traditionally very close. You might see High Point win this one by 5 or 6 this time around. Or will Robert Morris overachieve for their new coach? We'll see. Detroit Mercy, not a bad team. Titans have done a good job out there trying to build that program into a solid team, and they have that, but High Point should win this game as well. And then we've got to check in. We got to check in after this stretch. Bellarmine, Robert Morris, and Detroit Mercy. This is where they now start getting back to looking respectable. I think they handle their business versus Bobby Moe. That have them sitting at 5-4 heading into their next game against, who was that game against? Jacksonville. But let me make sure I did that math right, because we'd have 1 win. Oh, wait, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. They'd be 5-4 at that point, because they'd rattle off those 3 straight wins after starting 2-4. So I was right. I did my basic math right. Probably used Windows Calculator when I did it. Now we get into the nitty-gritty. One of their conference foes in Jacksonville. This could be a tough one. Jacksonville solid. Galloway's built a culture on the cusp of breaking out and winning more often than not. They're trying to do what High Point did also by being willing to play top teams, and they've hung well with teams like High Point and Richmond. I think they played Carolina last year. It wasn't a terrible showing. So Jacksonville typically can play High Point tough, and it's a conference foe, and Jacksonville is hell-bent on kind of unseating High Point and Richmond as king shit in the SoCon. So that should be a good one to watch there in Jacksonville. VMI going to be an easy win for High Point. Hampton. High Point should also beat Hampton. Richmond is going to be a death match, grudge match. Richmond is very good as well. So I kind of, let me see here. What did I put in my notes? Because I'm going to tell you now just what I've been looking at in Richmond. All right, check in. Oh, so I was supposed to check in per my notes here before we got to after the Hampton game. So same as before. After that Hampton game, I'm high on High Point. I think they eked that one out against Jacksonville, and I think that they'll be sitting at about 8-4 coming into this game against Richmond on Saturday, hosting their most hated conference rival, Richmond. And then, like I said, biggest game of the year every year. And sometimes they play them the last game of the year. In this case here, they're going to play them to the second to the last game of the regular season. Richmond's going to want revenge for that SoCon tournament loss from a year ago. High Point's going to just want to continue to become king, remain the top team in the SoCon. Tough to do because they've been doing battle for years now. Richmond and High Point have. So that one's a 50-50 toss-up. I have no idea, and I think they're going to beat Mercer by a handful of goals heading into the SoCon tournament. So that kind of does it for High Point's regular season. Now, let's assume they can't win all the games they should. Let's assume they can't win all the games that they should. I'll presume that Richmond gets revenge and that the Panthers finish the season 9-5 heading into the conference tournament. I'm not saying it ends up being Richmond that gets them, but let's assume they end up dropping a game to either Mercer, Richmond, Hampton, VMI, Jacksonville, Detroit Mercy, Robert Morris, Bellarmine. They're going to lose one of these games that they shouldn't lose. So instead of me thinking that they'll be 10-4 by the end of the season, I think they'll be 9-5. Once again, I hope I did that math right. But so I don't know. I think somebody will upset High Point in the process, but maybe they could end up pulling an upset somewhere. Moral of the story is that, they're going to come into that conference tournament, being either the best or the second best team in that conference, and with a very good chance of getting out of that conference tournament and getting themselves into the tournament. Now, once we get in the SoCon tournament itself, I'm not making any predictions because all bets are off at that point. The four teams that typically make the SoCon tournament are always solid. Traditionally, it's been Jacksonville, Air Force, High Point, and Richmond in this tournament, but every once in a while, one of these other teams will pop into the mix here. So all bets are off. I'm not predicting anything. I do think that they'll probably make it to the conference finals, and I bet you that the conference finals in the SoCon end up being Richmond and High Point doing battle, and then from there, flip a coin on who's going to win, at least now. No one can tell now. You could start making predictions later in the season once we see these teams play, especially after we see them play each other. But even with that, I still think it's a coin flip as to who wins this game. I wouldn't want to be taking any bets on this one because as you all know, I'm terrible at taking bets. So that's it. I talked about High Point. I think they end the regular season 9-5 in 2021. I think they make it to their conference finals. I presume they're going to end up playing Richmond in said conference finals, and that is where my predictions will end. I think Asher Nolting is going to absolutely destroy people this season. I think you're going to see Brayden Mayea and Asher Nolting develop a very Grant Ament, Mac O'Keefe-like 1-2 punch. It's already kind of been the case where Nolting's going to draw 2 or 3 heads, and Mayea has proven to be a very effective off-ball player, and he can do a little bit more than that as well, but he finishes off-ball with the best of them. So I think High Point's got their dynamic duo, which most teams need that dynamic duo. They have it. It just comes down to, in the end, how good can they end up being defensively, and what are they going to look like in cage, because Richmond's going to look pretty good defensively, and Richmond's typically pretty tough in cage. So that'll be it. And offensively, Richmond's going to be really good. So that is all. I'm going to probably do as many of these as I can. Like I said, I had a hard time coming up with what to talk about and what to ramble about, but you could see give me a schedule to rip through, and it's an easy way to write up a nice podcast where we can get deep into some of this content and some of these games, and I can then go back later on and we can see how I do with my predictions or whatnot. So expect more of that, because we're going to be really short on news moving forward here. So we'll just kind of rip through team schedules. We'll start ripping through teams' rosters and do a bunch of random crap. So that is all. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And be sure to like, subscribe, all of that crap. Share the podcast with people. You can go to LaxFactor.com. You can get yourself some swag. We've got all sorts of t-shirts. We've got Maryland t-shirts. We got, I can't say it's Cuse, but, 22 themed t-shirts here. But then we just got random crap. But if you really want to be cool, you'd walk around wearing that bad boy right there. Fear the Fruit, Fear the Fruit, baby. A lame Syracuse Orangeman t-shirt. So anyway, go to LaxFactor.com, support us that way, get some swag, and I'm going to get the hell out of here and move on with my day, check my crypto balances, and move on. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I will be back next Sunday, and Hoost is out.